Hey, what's up everybody? This is Osterberg501 and today I want to go over an anomaly power focused build for the Devastator that mixes in a lot of melee damage and will easily allow you to complete any challenge tier 15 expedition with gold times. Now before we get into the video, only 6% of people that watch my videos are subscribed to my channel. So make sure to subscribe if you want to keep up with all of my videos. Now I've done multiple variations of anomaly powered Devastator builds in the past, and this one is along the same lines as those. They just have a few changes that switch up the play style quite a bit and also increases the general power of this build quite a bit as well. So first up we have our skills, and first we have Earthquake, which is one of our main spamming damage abilities. This is the main way we're going to be applying bleed to a lot of enemies very quickly. With all of our mods, this is going to apply bleed and have 2 charges and do a pretty high amount of damage to all enemies in front of you. Next we have Golem. Now this is mainly used as a defensive ability and a utility ability to proc different damaging buffs we have through our class skill trees. And then finally we have Impale, which is a big burst ability for us. With this specific variation of this build, these can easily be hitting over 1.5 million damage, which is pretty ridiculous. With all of our mods, this deals a very high amount of damage. It hits up to 3 targets on every cast and has 3 charges. And next up we have our class skill tree. Now this is pretty similar to a lot of our other anomaly powered Devastator builds, and this only has a couple changes, but these couple changes heavily change the play style of the build. So first we have anomaly power increase, reduces cooldown for our Earthquake and Impale. More anomaly power when we use a protection ability, so Golem, we gain 45% anomaly power. Reduce cooldown for a protection ability, so Golem. Then we have a pretty big change. After we use a class melee skill, it increases our resistance piercing by 15% for each enemy hit for 10 seconds. And this will make much more sense why we chose this once we get into our armor mods. This ends up heavily increasing our damage, our survivability, and increasing a lot of these stats we're using in our build. Next we have resistance piercing increase by 15%, more anomaly power, reduce our seismic skill cooldowns again, more anomaly power increase. We double the damage of our melee skill, which is a big change for this build again. This build emphasizes our melee damage much more. Then we have increases damage we deal to low health enemies, increase anomaly power again, bleeds deal 30% more damage, we heal for 25% of our bleed damage, which is our main sustain ability, increases our skill life leech. Then we have increases our armor by 40% of our anomaly power, which is one of our main survivability increasers, increases our armor and resistance by 20% for 10 seconds when your skills end, meaning this is up 100% of the time, increases our resistance piercing, and then increases the base damage of our seismic abilities, so Earthquake and Impale. So next we have our weapons. Now there are a bunch of different mod choices you have for an anomaly power build, but I still think the best ones are focusing on using Moaning Winds. So we have the Anomaly with Moaning Winds and Fortress. For the massive proc with Moaning Winds, the increased damage of Fortress, which is one of the strongest mods in the game. Then we have the same thing on the Death Shield, Fortress and Moaning Winds. And then on our pistol, we have Moaning Winds and Clip Combustion. And the main thing we're going to be doing with our weapons, we're not actually going to be shooting them. What you're going to do is you're going to shoot 1 bullet out of all 3 of your weapons, and then you're going to switch, reload, and then quickly switch to another weapon, so the weapon isn't actually reloaded, but this will still proc Moaning Winds. So essentially what we get into is we proc Moaning Winds on one weapon, switch to the second, proc Moaning Winds, switch to the third, proc Moaning Winds, and then in 8 seconds we rinse and repeat, constantly keeping Moaning Winds procced and being able to have 3 procs every 8 seconds of this. This will commonly be dealing over 1 million damage to everything in 8 meters, doing a massive amount of AoE clearing damage. So next up we have our armor pieces, and our attribute priority is going to be anomaly power, cooldown reduction, status power, and skill life leech. And mainly it's going to come down to having anomaly power, cooldown reduction, and then we're also using the seismic commander's armor, so we deal 50% more damage with enemies that are bleeding, which both our main abilities cause bleed and our melee causes bleed, which are the 3 main things we're going to be doing for damage. So we should pretty easily be able to have bleed on all enemies at all times. So first I want to go over the main reason we're going to be using resistance piercing. We have 2 class passives, and then anything we hit with our melee will give us increasing resistance power. And that is Unstoppable Force, and this is one of the main changes for this build. Increases your anomaly power by 50% of your resistance piercing. Now just with our 2 passives, which gives us 30% resistance piercing, this gives us a little over a 12% increase to our anomaly power, which is pretty massive by itself. This will increase our ability damage, our bleed damage, our weapon mod damage. Pretty much majority of the main damage we're going to be dealing will be increased by our anomaly power. Now, every time we hit one enemy with a melee, we're going to get 15% in this stack. So if we do an AoE melee attack into a group of enemies, we can easily get thousands and thousands of anomaly power. Sometimes if you go into your inventory when in combat, I'll easily see I have 300, 400,000 anomaly power because of how much extra resistance piercing we have from our melee ability. And this is one of the main changes, going more for anomaly power and getting that constant increase to resistance piercing, giving us a lot more anomaly power. Now what this also does is, because we also have talents that increases our armor based off our anomaly power, we will constantly be getting armor increases as well. So not only are we going to be getting increases to most of the damage we deal by more resistance power from meleeing enemies, but we're also going to be getting more armor as we get more anomaly power, making us deal more damage and become tankier. So first we have our helmet, one of our Seismic Commander's piece, anomaly power, status power, skill, life leech, good rolls, and this is one of the pieces we need for our tier set bonus. We have ultimate impaler. Impale can be used 2 additional times before triggering the cooldown, giving us our max of 3, and then blood shock, earthquake inflicts bleeds on enemies damaged by the skill, very important for this build. Then we have our chest piece, another tier set, anomaly power, status power, cooldown reduction, god rolled stats for this build. We have Palisade. This impale can strike 2 additional targets, giving us our maximum of 3 targets per impale. Then we have Unstoppable Force, which we already went over, giving us more damage and more armor to become more tanky. Next up, we have our legs, which are our final piece for our tier set bonus. Anomaly power, status power, cooldown reduction, god rolled stats. This comes with tainted blood. We deal more damage against enemies inflicted with bleed. So now we deal 75% increased damage against bleeding enemies. So a massive damage increase. Then we have second quake. So our earthquake can be used 1 additional time, giving us our maximum of 2 uses. Now there is also a tier 1 mod that also increases the amount of times you can use earthquake. So you can either use second quake or that tier 1 version that does the same exact thing. Next we have our gloves, anomaly power, status power, cooldown reduction, god rolled stats. We have ground crush, increases our skill's base damage of earthquake, massively increasing the damage it can deal. Then rivers of blood, impale deals 50% additional damage to bleeding enemies, so just a massive burst damage increase for impale. And then our boots, anomaly power, status power, cooldown reduction, god rolled stats again. We have sharpened spike, impale now deals 130,000 more damage. This is just a massive base damage increase. Then we have another change for this build, and this is something that's a little bit more of a option to be changed. I have Brawl on to boost our melee skill damage by 100%. Now you don't necessarily need this. You could go with another anomaly power increasing mod or give yourself another stack of earthquake to use. I just wanted to try this out because this build has a more focus of weaving in melees to increase our damage, to deal more damage, and I want to give it a little bit more of an identity of being a bit more focused on using your melee skill. And our melee can actually hit ridiculously hard, sometimes even getting over 1 million damage on some of our melees with all of our buffs up, with a bunch of additional anomaly power stacked up. So the playstyle of this build is definitely just weaving all of our tools together. So first off, you always want to be applying bleed to everything as quickly as possible, usually done by earthquaking enemies or hitting them with a melee attack. Then we're going to be wanting to weave in all of our moaning winds from our 3 weapons. Try to use that on cooldown because it's such a massive AoE burst damage. And then mixing in with that, we're going to be using our impales and earthquakes anytime we can. And it ends up just becoming you constantly using all the tools you have at your disposal. You want a melee because you want to apply bleed and get that stacking resistance piercing that gives you more armor and more anomaly power. You want to be using your moaning winds on all of your weapons to do massive AoE damage. And then you want to be using your earthquake and your impale to apply bleed and do a lot of ability damage. So it's just getting in that flow and mixing in all of the tools you have in your build. So that's all I wanted to go over with this build. Subscribe if you want to see more Outriders or other videos. Leave a like if you liked the video. Leave a comment down below what you guys think about this build, and thanks for watching.
You want me to raise your morale? There's no one left. Now you know the clusterfuck I'm dealing with.
Military support incoming!
Coast looks good. That's one of our pods. Maybe it's landed on the insurgent side. Can't for Seth. You again. What a waste of your last words. Remember that freak I fought last time? The one who nearly buried me alive?
Access granted.
Am I gonna have to dig you out of the rubble again?
Not this time. He's sung his last. And the pod's out.